Here are 9 amazing cars that you can get for under 5 grand.
You're watching Throttle House. I'm Thomas.
And I'm James, and today we're looking at some pretty great cars that you can get for under $5,000 US, or in maple syrup land, about $7,000.
In what is great, right? Because I don't even know. I've been in lockdown for so long that I don't remember what colors taste like.
Okay. So, for this, we wanted to find the most car for the money, and we did not limit it to the most reliable or the fastest. We wanted to find cars that had a specific focus on an X factor, something that makes them cool. And we've scoured the genres and compiled what we think is a very fun list. Oh, and it's by no means a buying guide. And as always, this is not the only list. In fact, we purposefully tried to stay away from the more obvious ones. Let's do this. And if you're new to Throttle House, we do car reviews, track tests, and quite a lot of messing about. So subscribe and hit the bell. Number 9, the Mazda RX-8. We're going rotary.
Yep. Honestly, I didn't realize these were this cheap. Unique styling, suicide doors, and a rotary engine.
Yeah, for those of you that are familiar with the RX-8 being a rotary engine but aren't quite sure what that means, kind of like when you hear that an old Porsche is air-cooled. Oh wow, air-cooled, yeah! It is a very cool engine.
Instead of traditional pistons, it has a single rotor that turns around a casing to compress the air and fuel mixture. And basically, since it's so simple, it runs incredibly smoothly, revs very high, and actually has a really great sound.
But it ultimately failed because they're horrible on fuel, burn a ton of oil, are terrible for emissions, and you have to be careful how you start, stop, and drive them.
But assuming you pay attention to what you're buying and how you own it, the RX-8 is a great sounding, great looking, really good handling car for under $5,000. Number 8, the Toyota MR2. Okay, this car has a unique characteristic that no other car on this list has.
Yeah, whichever generation you go for, you can get yourself a sporty little Toyota that's mid-engined.
Just like a mini supercar, the engine is behind you and in front of the rear axle. And actually that's what MR2 stands for, mid-engined, rear-wheel drive, 2-seater. You can get a 3rd-gen car for about $5 grand, but for us the sweet spot is the 2nd generation MR2. Like this one.
Little car need only little engine, which is good because it only came with a 130 horsepower, 2.2 litre 4-cylinder. But if you wanted to, you could option it with the power package, which massively extended the power to the windows and door locks. The power package gives you power windows and power door locks.
But with mild power comes great crashability.
Yeah, these are known for doing a lovely little thing called snap oversteer. Basically, it means that because the engine's behind you and the chassis isn't that sophisticated, if you lift off the throttle mid-corner, well, you'll swap ends.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thing, and it's not super easy to control. But the upside is, over the time that you have your MR2, you'll get really good at driving, because you'll have to, or this will happen. Number 7, the Infiniti G37. We didn't plan that. Up until recently, you could only get a 3rd-gen G35 for about this price, but now you can get a 4th-gen G37. And while a good car, right at the outset, it does need to be said that Infiniti as a brand I don't think needs to exist. Nissan is a cool enough brand as it is. And recently, anyway, Infiniti has completely lost the plot.
Yeah, they look fantastic, but they've prioritized comfort over driver connection. The steering wheel isn't even physically connected to the wheels.
Right, but go back in time to the G37 era, and thankfully it is. And even though you can get a 370Z from this era, those are still quite expensive. But the G37, its bigger, more sophisticated brother, is cheap in both coupe and sedan form.
And really, you can only just find them for under $5,000. And it's an incredibly competent sports car. You might have to settle for a not-so-stellar automatic transmission at this price. We only actually found one manual in our range. But either way, you get a late 2000s, so not that old, 3.7 litre V6 that makes a very healthy 328 horsepower.
And it has a proper rear-wheel drive chassis. You're basically getting 370Z levels of power and engineering, but for a much cheaper price. And it's more practical.
But spend a little bit more than $5,000 if you can. Number 6, the Pontiac Firebird. So those other cars don't float your boat. You don't want an Infiniti, and you don't want a Toyota with a pithy 4-cylinder. What if, for under $5,000 or thereabouts, you could get a monstrous V8 American muscle car?
Under the hood of one of these Firebirds, you get the LT1 V8 that was in the C4 Corvette. Actually, my first car was a Pontiac Bonneville SSEI. It was a hand-me-down, and it actually shares a steering wheel with this car. Hashtag memories. And both of those cars are sadly from a manufacturer that no longer exists.
Which is why it's cheap. 305 horsepower and available in manual. Although at the time of searching, full disclaimer, we could only find it in automatic. It is a no-holds-barred, rubber-burning drag race monster, if you want it to be. Or, thanks to the back seats, which the Corvette don't gonna have. Is that right? No? Okay. It's fun for the whole family.
And this one has the GT package, which changes so many things. It makes the 235 width tires 245, wow, and it makes the speedometer go from, instead of 150 miles an hour, all the way up to 155 miles an hour. And it actually raises the top speed, but that's it.
And yeah, the looks are very 90s America. But, on to number 5. Number 5, the BMW 3 Series E46 generation. Okay, I'm gonna let Thomas take this one.
This is my E46 BMW. I've actually owned 3 of these. In fact, I started this YouTube channel by tuning and modifying E46 BMWs. And the reason for that is that for well under $5,000, you can get yourself a rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, inline-6, perfectly balanced BMW that's incredibly versatile. I've dailied them, I've tracked them. And currently I'm converting this exact car into an endurance racing car. And I bought it for $2,000.
Yeah, but how much money have you spent repairing it?
Shh, not important.
And is that even the original engine that came with it?
The point is that even though there is a crap ton of maintenance to do on these, and they very often break, they're really, really cheap. Parts are plentiful, and there's a million to choose from. Just buy some wrenches, watch some YouTube videos, learn to work on your car yourself, and for really cheap, you can have yourself a fantastic little sports car. And you don't even need to buy the M3. A 325i will do just fine. Even though I swapped a 330 motor into this one. Number 4, the Saab 92X Aero. This is one of the coolest cars on this list.
Yeah, because like me, up until recently, you might not even know that it exists.
If you're wondering why it kind of looks and sounds like a Subaru WRX with a Saab badge on the front, that's only because it is a Subaru WRX with a Saab badge on the front.
Basically, in the early 2000s, General Motors owned Saab, and they also had a little stake in Subaru. So when Saab wanted a little all-wheel drive hatchback, they grabbed the WRX, dressed it up in Saab badges, and then sold it here in North America.
But thankfully, it wasn't just as simple as new badges. They actually redesigned the entire front end and gutted the interior and put nicer materials in there and extra sound deadening. And the coolest part is that they used the steering rack from the STI, so it had a very quick steering ratio. And they tuned the suspension.
Yeah, if you can find the Aero trim, like this one, it still has the same WRX 2-litre turbo flat 4, making 227 horsepower. But it's overall just a more comfortable, better performing WRX. And coming from a guy that owns a WRX from that era, I can tell you firsthand it could do with just a little bit more refinement. Okay, a lot more refinement.
And if you're lucky, really lucky, you can find one of these for cheap. But expect all the typical Subaru problems from the era, and good luck finding the Saab specific parts for this car. Number 3, the Ford Crown Victoria Ex-Police Interceptor.
Crown, because amongst sub $5,000 used cars, this one is black and blue royalty. Black and white, blue and white. The fuzz, the blue fuzz. What's the police phrase?
James, I believe you call them Rozzers, Bobbies, Coppers.
I know you like to think it is, Thomas, but my life isn't just episodes of Peaky Blinders. Okay, the Crown Vic. Legend. V8, rear-wheel drive, body on frame. It's essentially a tank in car form.
Yep, you can modify them, you can drift them, and they do burnouts.
That counts.
That counts as a
really
burnout.
counts as a burnout.
They're cheap, they last forever. People slow down when they see you. And if you're not careful while driving on a California canyon and you're filming a stupid YouTube car review with a movie car dressed police Crown Victoria, and the thing that's covering the police lights falls off, which definitely didn't happen, then even the cops think that you're a cop. And they salute you as you drive past, only to realize that when you have driven past that you're not a cop, and then they walk over to their car, and then they chase you this way.
Which didn't happen to us though, definitely not. And as long as you don't follow the same back alley YouTube tutorial that James must have watched, you can hood slide them. Number 2, the Porsche 944.
Yeah, you heard, a $5,000 Porsche. And a lot of Porsches from this time went up in value, but some of them have become a value. The latter describes the 944.
And not only does it have a beautiful design, it's actually a beautiful car to drive. And that's because it has a transaxle. That means that the 143 horsepower 4-cylinder engine is at the front, but the transmission is at the back. That gives it a perfect weight distribution, which means the handling is fantastic. And since it's a Porsche from the 80s, it's very engaging to drive.
And to be honest, $5,000 does not buy you the cleanest examples, but they're still available for that price. Just
be ready to put some time and some money into one, or just buy a more expensive one at the outset, just like the E46. But if you do get one, and you take care of it, you have a really timeless, fantastic handling car. And any other Porsche from this era is like 30 grand.
You could also look for a 924 from this era as well, but properly clean examples at the 5K mark pop up very rarely, so keep an eye.
Number 1, the Volkswagen Phaeton. This is one of the most amazing Volkswagens ever made, and you might not have even heard of it. It originally sold with a 6-figure price tag, but since then, the prices have absolutely plummeted.
Obviously, you'd have to be completely foolish to even consider buying one. Unrelated, with a special appearance for our final car, here's Todd from Everyday Driver, who is a proud owner of one of these.
I bought this car because I was always fascinated by them. In the early 2000s, the CEO of Volkswagen said, we're going to make the world's greatest luxury sedan and sell it as a Volkswagen, which is like the people trying to sell you a high-definition film camera. Those words don't really go together, but let's give that a shot. This is a 2004, the first year they sold it in the US. They only sold it until 2006 because it was a sales disaster. When people come into Volkswagen looking for a Jetta, they're not going to spend upwards of $80,000. The great news? I got this for $5,000. Yes, it's got some problems, but $5,000, I had to give it a shot.
So, it was a very expensive car, and that's because it had some crazy tech.
I'm not sure you need it, but it does have a draftless HVAC system. If nothing else, it's theatrical. It has fully adjustable air suspension with even a sport mode. It also has different ride heights It will have smart cruise control if you spec it right, 18-way adjustable seats with massage. In the upper levels of the Phaeton, you could spend $120,000 and wind up with a 4-seater with executive class back seats, heat, massage, the entire thing back here in the back. But even here in the base model, I've got pretty much more legroom than anything any modern car has provided.
And I know I said you'd be foolish to buy one, but I'm sure theirs has been fine, reliable and everything.
Oh, has it been expensive to keep running?
Oh. Okay. But it still has value, and it's a lot of car.
One of my favorite things about this car is anyone I let drive it or ride in it, the minute we're up to freeway speed, looks at me and says, "How much did you pay for this?" They cannot believe what a great highway road trip car this is, especially at $5,000. Imagine if I'd bought a good one.
So there you go, a ton of car for the money. Thank you very much, Todd, for sending us over that clip. If you want to see more of his adventure with the Volkswagen Phaeton and Paul's adventure with an equally ill-advised Maserati Quattroporte, head over to the Everyday Driver YouTube channel.
All right, there's 9 funky cars that you can get for under $5,000 US. Don't do it. Do it. Let us know what other topics and themes you want us to cover for our Throttle Stay in the House series. We actually need this. It's keeping us sane during times of isolation.
These are not the droids you're looking for.
Oh. Okay, well, Thomas seems to have lost his mind thanks to all the time he's had on his own. 1 like equals 1 prayer for Thomas. Thanks for watching.